what do you call these things? PowerPoints? So bear with me here. And I tried to make my speaking points kind of match these slides. So I'm really going to talk a little bit more about the business side of it and things that you have to think of early in your business tenure so that you don't end up having to repeat them or go back and change them as you go a little bit further down the road. And it doesn't pertain to all of you because we're going to go all the way to going to market with co-packers and so on and so forth. And that may not be of interest to you now. It may be of interest to you in the future. So we're going to try and touch on all those things so that you kind of can map out a long-range plan, and this might be particularly useful for you guys with what you're trying to do. Okay, so when we start out in the cottage food industry and we're working at home, it has lots of advantages for us. We get to stay home, we get to work when we have time, and we make some money, hopefully. Generally don't make a lot of money though, do we? How come? Because we work a lot, we don't produce a lot, and then we spend a lot of time trying to sell it. So if we turn all that into hours devoted to sales generated, we're working way below minimum wage in most cases, aren't we? But you know, if you enjoy it, what the hell, right? Okay. But when we're starting out in business, and I would really caution you in the small business, the cottage food, and even as you progress a little bit, not to anticipate making much in the way of profit. If you can cover your costs as you expand, I think you should be happy with that. And there's some questions that you kind of have to ask yourself as you go along to make sure that you're doing that. But when we work from home, we don't have startup costs in most cases, except for the exorbitant fees that the county charges you, and some equipment that you buy. But we get to start the business, and then we kind of watch it bloom, hopefully. So let's talk about some of the liabilities we have in that wonderful situation. In restaurants, when we talk about foodborne illness and liability for foodborne illness, we refer to that as an outbreak. And correct me if I'm wrong here, but an outbreak is 2 or more people that have the same disease from the same food product, and it's been verified. And what do you think it costs that restaurant operator when they go to court, when they go into what's called litigation? First of all, how often do you think they win? Not enough to establish a 1% success rate. And what does it cost them per person for damages? What's lots?
Well, it could be $1 million.
$1 million. Well, there's an average that's quite a bit lower than $1 million, but between what we call punitive damages and compensatory damages, it's about $80,000 per person. Per person. So if we, and you're covered under the same situation, which is called reasonable care. And this all goes back to what we refer to as an implied warranty. When we sell food, it doesn't have to be a good value. It doesn't have to taste good. It doesn't have to come to the table in a timely fashion. It doesn't have to have a cheery server behind it or behind the counter that hands it to us. It's a good thing, right? But it has to be wholesome. And when our food isn't wholesome, we have to establish what's called reasonable care, meaning that we did everything that could be reasonably expected of us to keep that food safe. And this is why you go through the permitting and the inspection stages. You know, this is real important stuff. So if you went to a farmer's market with your mustard, not that you'd ever have a problem with your mustard, and you had an issue with it, and you sold 100 jars of it, That'd be great, wouldn't it? Unless you made 100 people sick, right? So what would your settlement be on that? Let's see, 80,000 times 100. I think it's $8 million bucks, isn't it? Okay, so who pays that? Yeah, hopefully your insurance company. So you all have to have liability insurance. And you have to have liability insurance before you start off. The standard used to be $1 million, and that's pretty much moved up to $2 million now. And the best place to get liability insurance is from the carrier that you have now for your home and your cars and so on and so forth. You can shop it. It's a few $100s a year. You don't have employees, so you don't have liability there. You don't need sexual harassment, which is even more expensive than the liability insurance. But you need to have liability insurance.
Well, can I say something?
Sure.
I did ask my insurance about this State Farm.
Uh-huh.
They have my car insurance, my home insurance, and they say they don't.
But they quoted us on it.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Well, I'll need the name of that.
It was Capitola, the people in Capitola.
Okay.
But most insurance companies will be able to quote you on liability insurance. So as you go and you're paying the rest of your fees, make sure that you're covered by liability insurance. It may not be your problem. It may be something that you got that was contaminated, but they're going to come to you first, are they not? Ouch. Huh? And then you have to go after, with whatever resources you have left, you have to go after whoever supplied the products to you.
I recommend getting a balloon liability to cover all your assets in addition to...
Well, I can't speak to that. I'm not an attorney. My daughter's an attorney. I'm pretty happy about that. And what does she say? She says, never give people legal advice because you're not an attorney. But my point is, go out, spend the money, get yourself $2 million bucks in liability insurance. Now, going back to our reasonable care defense, the reason that restaurants lose so much is because they can't establish reasonable care. So how can you, as a food producer, prove that you have established reasonable care, that you have done the things that you're supposed to do? Massimo has to do this all the time. I worked with Massimo on his HACCP program.
3 months.
3 months. Yeah, we spent some time on that. Yeah.
Does this have something to do with establishing like traceability?
Yep, and we're going to talk about that. Okay.
Log activities and...
Okay, so what sort of things are we concerned about with food safety? We're not going to dwell on food safety for a long time, but we're going to talk about some of the things that you might be looking at. Okay, time temperature control is a big one. So how do we ensure that our food is being held at the proper temperature?
Thermometer?
Yeah, and how do we record that? You keep a log, right? So it's a little more complicated in restaurants, but it's relatively simple if you're in cottage food, especially if you have separate refrigeration for the products that you may need to refrigerate. Well, I guess they can't be doing that at home, can they?
They could have a separate refrigerator, but they don't have to.
Yeah.
Separate spot in the same refrigerators.
Right, but aren't they supposed to not be handling refrigerated food?
Well, no, you can have refrigerated ingredients like eggs and cookies.
Oh, okay. All right. So one of the other things that you have to be concerned about, and I'm sure that you guys have already done this, is the training that you receive. Now, we've talked about a food handler's card, and that's a real simple thing to do. You can go online. We work with a company called efoodhandlers.com. ServSafe has a program. There's 2 or 3 others. Make sure that if you do that whoever you're going through is ANSI certified. It's ANSI. Otherwise, Phil and his people won't accept that certification because it's not up to standard. But you as an operator should go a little bit further and get yourself certified as a manager. So ServSafe is probably the most common, and it's much more in depth. It's more of a time investment. There's a few dollars to invest. Phil, are you doing workshop? Are you doing testing other than at Cabrillo?
Just at Cabrillo at this point.
Okay. Phil has a class at Cabrillo. Did you guys take that? How do you do? Is he okay? Yeah. Did you pass? Did you pass? You passed? Yeah, barely, huh?
What's the class called? What's the course called?
Food safety, it's ServSafe is the most recognized and the most widely accepted. We also offer it out at the Incubator Kitchen, CDC, and we're going to talk about that. And ROP offers it, do they not? So there's a list at Phil's office of people who will do that certification process for you. So ramp up your education. Make sure that you understand a little bit more than you get from a food handler's card. That's really just very, very basic stuff. Okay, it's not good enough for what you're going to be doing. All right? Okay. Now I have to switch. Here we go. All right. Biggest question that we get at the SBDC when people come in, we get a lot of people like yourselves who are trying to get started here, is what do I sell it for? How do I know how much to sell it for? And that's, that takes a little bit of calculation. So, we're working with what we call prime cost. And prime cost is the cost of goods, labor, and labor related. Labor related is what?
Shopping?
No, labor related is what we put on a payroll. This is something you were, when you had a regular job that they took out of you, that was your contribution. Your employer makes the same contribution. In California, that runs about 20%. So if you're paying somebody $10 an hour, they actually cost you $12, okay? And packaging costs. Labor related is also referred to as payroll load. Who asked me that? Oh. And that's the things like unemployment insurance, workman's comp, stuff like that. If you have payroll, if you have people on payroll, you have to pay that on top of what you actually pay them. Okay? Many of you may be paying people in cash, which is okay. What's the negative to paying people in cash?
No revenue, no deductions.
You can deduct it if they qualify as an independent contractor, but what's the real negative about having somebody in there paying them in cash?
Well, if something happens,
Yeah, there's no workman's comp. So if they hurt themselves in your place, that goes back to your liability policy. Okay? So you're better off to put them on payroll. There's lots of simple payroll programs. You can write them a check, make sure that everything is on the up and up. The biggest problem that I see is cost of goods. How do we know what our product actually costs? Did you guys do your cost control at Cabrillo? Oh, then you got this all down, right? Okay. Yeah, they're pointing at each other, right? Okay. How do we calculate? Who shall we work with here? Let's take somebody's product. Who doesn't have their product costed?
Let's do my product.
Let's do your product. What is your product?
I make a strawberry rhubarb with lavender and Meyer lemon rice.
And is that a pie? Did you say it was a pie?
It's a marmalade.
A marmalade.
Yes.
Okay. So how does she go about costing that? How does she go about figuring out what it costs her to make it?
first she has to have the list of all the ingredients.
Okay, so the first thing she needs is what? She has to have a recipe, right?
Yes.
Okay. And the recipe has a list of ingredients, right? And we have to associate with each of those ingredients a cost. Right? Okay, so most of you are working with what we call batch recipes, and those are a little simpler to learn to cost because you don't have yields and things like that in there. Yields meaning the difference between something, the cost of something when I buy it and after I fabricate it. So with a batch recipe, we need the recipe, a list of ingredients, which is obviously in the recipe, and the cost for each of those ingredients. Then we calculate a total cost. And we have to do what with that total cost? Help me here, guys. What are we going to do with it?
Divided by the quantity that it yields.
Yeah, so we have to then divide total cost divided by yield. Almost left the L out. And yield can only happen in three forms. There's ounce weight, ounce fluid, and each. Okay, most of you are each. So when you make a batch of jam, how many jars does that give you? How many units?
I use 2 cups of strawberries.
Well, I don't need all that. I just need to know how many jars of strawberries. 2 jars?
Yes, because I don't make big batches. I make small batches.
That's some expensive jelly, isn't it? Yeah, okay.
Not jelly, it's marmalade. Very different than
You can expand the recipe. It really doesn't matter because your costs are going to be the same whether it's for 2 units or 20 units. It changes when you start talking about 200 units, but you're not at that point. So if the ingredients cost $10 and you got 2 jars out of it, oh my goodness. What is that cost per jar?
$5.
$5. So we got cost of goods, $5.
Forgot the jar fee and the label.
We're getting to that. Doesn't matter what size it is. Doesn't matter because we're trying to calculate what we need to sell a jar for. I'm hoping it's a 4-gallon jar. All right. So our cost of goods is $5. And how long does it take you to make that?
No. The process
From beginning to
from
end.
the beginning to end 2 days.
Maybe this is a bad choice. How many hours of direct labor do you spend? Not how long does it? An hour each day. 2 hours labor. Okay.
Did you gotta cut the rind and get the pith off of it?
No.
Just you, I hope, huh? 2 hours of labor, and what do you pay yourself?
$1.50?
Yeah.
Nothing.
You don't pay yourself anything, right? None of you pay yourselves anything. So when you have money left over and you think it's profit, it's not profit because you didn't pay yourself.
I see where you are going.
Okay.
I totally agree with you, but the method that I make this marmalade, it's very different than the...
I'm not arguing with the marmalade. We're just trying to figure out what you need to sell it for, okay?
So that's why the price would be a lot higher than, what we have there.
Okay, so when you're calculating what you're going to sell it for, you have to calculate labor in there because if you don't, when you're no longer making it, then the formula doesn't work anymore. So even though you're not paying yourself, you have to put yourself in there. So if you paid yourself $10 an hour and you work 2 hours, that $10 is actually 12, so you got $24 in labor. That's well, we're not done yet because we don't have the label, the jar, and all that. Yes, ma'am. Let me finish hers, and then we'll pick up your question. Okay, is that okay?
Yeah.
No, I mean.
Well, it's actually part of this.
Okay.
I'm curious, like, her jam has to cool, does that fall under the labor?
No, only if you're standing
It's
there.
only when you're making it.
Yeah.
You're working on it.
Yeah, from the time you walk into the kitchen, start working.
The oven, not on the stove.
Now, if you're off watching Days of Our Lives, that's not labor.
When you're going to apply your label is going to be part of that, though, because you're being working.
Absolutely. So anytime that you're actually directly handling the product, that labor has to go against it. So then we got packaging, and we're not going to get into all that, but we got packaging, and we got this huge label that Phil made us make. So let's say that that's another $3. So my total batch cost here is $32. Okay?
No, it's more than that, because you
No,
already
it's-
cut the fruit, you already cut the jar in half.
It's 37.
Yeah, the
cut the
cost
jar
of
in
good
half
was
per jar.
$5, was for one jar, and the 8.
Oh, yeah, you're right. Oh, my God. Oh, it's getting worse all the time, isn't it? All right, so now we got $10. We got $37 in these 2 jars? Okay.
Jam, that's marmalade for the queen.
Yeah, so now we're going to divide that by a number of units, 2, and that gives us what, $18.50 a jar? Okay. 18.50.
Double that to get your money back, so.
Well, we're not exactly going to double it, but you're not far off. 18.50 is prime. Okay, that's cost of goods, cost of labor, even though you didn't pay labor, and packaging. Now, in restaurants, we don't add packaging. This number has to be no more than 60% of your selling price. Okay? So we're going to divide it by 60%. Anybody got a calculator on their phone? You all got calculators on your phone. Anybody want to actually do this?
No, I have to.
750. 7.
So we're taking 1850 divided by 60%. The answer has to be bigger, right? No, you're multiplying it. Then we're selling it below cost, which is probably what we're doing anyway, right?
$6.
No, it isn't. You're going the wrong way. You're multiplying it by 60.
11.
Divide it by 0.60.
38, right?
How much?
38, right?
No, you multiplied it.
11.
No, I totally divided it.
Dividing by less than 100.
Oh, I'm sorry. It was yes, it was 1850. Okay, how much was it? $30.83. And the difference between this and this has to cover our distribution, our marketing, discounting, things like that. So this is the formula. Hopefully it comes out a little more,
The price for 2 jars right there.
that's the price per 1 jar.
One jar.
Yeah, $31 a jar.
I'll dream about your jelly, your marmalade.
Oh, yeah, that's
Come in under the market, it's gonna take you a month to get 60 jars. It's gonna be 15 jars in a month, it'll take you 2 days to make it.
All right, so this is my point. You're all going to have a different formula here. You know, you make 20 gallons of barbecue sauce in the bathtub because you're making it at night. Environmental health is not around. It doesn't matter. Yeah, no, we clean it afterwards because it stains the tub. And you end up with 200 bottles. This is the formula. Okay? So this is how we create or calculate what we call selling price. All right? And then you may have to adjust this. Now, the kicker for most of you is right here. You're not paying yourselves, and you miscalculate. I mean, you might do this, and you say, okay, I got $6 in it, I'll sell it for 12, and I'll be okay. You're losing $6